The kitchen workers in Wesselton Manor had just finished cleaning up after the Duke and his men and left the kitchen for their daily critique in the dining hall. The Duke had been particularly harsh that morning and kept his staff longer than usual. While the kitchen was empty, Hans and Lars saw their chance to carefully climb out of the large cart of fruit that they had buried themselves in. "How did you know that the Duke was going to use this specific storehouse to retrieve his food?" Hans asked Lars. Lars brushed himself off as he climbed out of the cart. "I told you, little brother. I've been watching the Duke's men closely." He and Hans checked themselves to make sure they were clean and wouldn't leave a trail behind once they started looking for the queens. "Once each week, a group of guards brings a barrel of flour along with 2 carts of fresh meat, fruits, and vegetables for the Duke's meals," Lars explained. "Just be glad we didn't have to climb into a meat cart," he laughed. Hans shook his head. "I'll stick with the fruit, thank you." They started to get comfortable with their surroundings as they looked around the large stone kitchen. A moment passed where neither of the brothers spoke as they each thought intently about their next move. Hans was the first to get frustrated. How are we supposed to know where the Duke is keeping the queens?" he asked out loud. "I swear, if that little weasel has touched one hair—" "Hans," Lars interjected. "Hans, calm down. Let's think about this rationally. I'm sure we'll find them." Hans took a couple of deep breaths as he listened to what Lars had to say. "The way I see it," Lars began, "even though this place doesn't compare in size or outright cruelness, we should think of it as though we were in the Southern Isles." Hans looked confused for a minute, but then Lars noticed an expression appear on his brother's face as though he had figured it out. "In Father's castle," Hans began to say, "we had a few cells outside of the dungeon area that were used for the king's more personal prisoners, right? Well, what if the Duke does too? That would have to be far away from the main entrance, but close enough to the Duke's room for him to keep an eye on his captives. So that's where we'll start then," Lars said as he placed his hand on Hans' shoulder to ensure his brother had calmed down. The young prince looked over to his older brother and surprised him by responding, "No." "No?" Lars asked. "No, that's not where we'll start looking. That's where you will start looking," answered Hans. Now Lars was the one with the confused look on his face. "Look, I know the Duke," Hans explained. "He would keep Queen Anna in a special cell near his room because he doesn't fear her. Queen Elsa is a different story. Not only does the coward fear the queen, but he also hates her with a passion." "So where would he be keeping Queen Elsa then?" Lars asked. "She's in the main dungeon for now," Hans responded without hesitation. "He wouldn't feel safe enough to walk the halls if she were anywhere else. So let's go get the queen together," Lars suggested. Hans shook his head no in response. "I need you to get Anna out of the manor by any means necessary. Queen Elsa will want to know she's safe, and I need to know that you're safe too." The two brothers smiled and embraced before stealthily making their way out of the kitchen and into one of the many hallways that lay within Wesselton Manor. Hans and his brother walked alongside each other for a few minutes as they slowly crept through the halls, but when they came upon a staircase that led to the second floor of the manor, they knew it was time for them to separate. Hans and Lars gave each other a simple nod, and without saying a word, Lars ascended the staircase as Hans continued slowly making his way through the halls on the first floor. "Where is everyone?" the prince thought as he found himself wondering why the halls were so empty. He had yet to see a single guard since he and his brother had infiltrated the manor, but that all changed as he stepped around a corner of the maze-like hallway. Hans stood frozen in place as he noticed a single guard sitting beside an open door. He squinted his eyes as he tried to focus closely on the sitting soldier. "Is he sleeping?" Hans wondered to himself. He crouched down low as he quietly continued to stalk the hall, making sure to stay even-footed on the thick green carpet that lined the center of the floor. As Hans got closer to the guard, he knew that he wasn't mistaken and that he was clearly in a deep sleep. There was an empty breakfast plate lying on the floor beside his chair. Hans looked past the guard into the open doorway and saw a set of stone stairs leading down. "Ah, the dungeon," he thought. He looked back at the sleeping guard. "This one must have a key somewhere," Hans thought as he looked around. His eyes were slowly drawn to a small table beside the guard where the prince could see a key resting. He had to stifle any laughter as he thought to himself, "The Duke really only hires fools, huh?" Hans swiftly snatched the key from the table beside the guard, and as quietly as he could, he began descending the stairs into the dungeon. As he reached the bottom of the stairs, his eyes widened when he noticed Elsa sitting on the floor with steel shackles covering the lower halves of both her arms. "Queen Elsa," he said quietly as he rushed over to her. Elsa looked up. She hadn't noticed the young prince come down the stairs. "Hans," she exclaimed, "what are you doing here?" Hans knelt down beside the queen and reached out for her shackles, and as he began to unlock them with the key he took from the guard upstairs, he said, "I'm setting you free." Hans removed the chains from Elsa and gently placed them on the ground as quietly as possible. Elsa had a puzzled look on her face. "He told me that you were gone. The ship, too. The weasel told you that?" Hans said with a slight chuckle. "No, we would never leave you behind. Officers Ingrid and Anders went back to the ship as soon as we discovered that you'd been captured. They wanted me to assure you that in no more than 2 days' time, you will have the entire Arendelle fleet at your disposal. Wesselton will pay for this treachery." Elsa wanted to smile, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. "What about Anna and Kristoff?" she asked. "My brother Lars is here," Hans responded. Elsa looked even more confused now. "Lars?" "Yes, he's looking for the Queen and Kristoff as we speak," Hans explained. "As for us, we need to get you out of this dungeon as fast as we can. Are you ready?" Elsa nodded as she stood to her feet. The pair sprinted up the stone staircase leading out of the dungeon, only to be met at the top of the stairs by a single guard. The guard's eyes widened and he opened his mouth to call out for help, but he couldn't get the words out in time. Hans hadn't slowed down after seeing the guard and used his momentum to crash into the Duke's soldier, slamming him into the hallway wall. The guard slid down to the ground as he tried to catch his breath after the wind was knocked out of him. Hans didn't waste any time and he grabbed Elsa's hand as he began running down the hallway toward the entrance of the manor. He winced at the chill resonating from the Queen's hand, but the cold feeling quickly faded as they ran as fast as they could through the halls. Elsa looked down at her hand and then back up toward Hans, who was guiding her through the manor as fast as he could. "The kitchen's up ahead," he said as they continued running. "We'll go out the servants' entrance and then meet up with Lars and Queen Anna as soon as we're clear." Hans knew that his plan was changing as soon as he rounded the next corner and saw his brother looking around. "Hans!" Lars called as he saw his brother and Queen Elsa come around the corner. "I can't find the Duke's room." "What?" Hans asked. "Where's Queen Anna? Where's my sister?" Elsa asked the brothers. Lars looked over to Queen Elsa. "My queen, I'm sorry we're meeting under such terrible circumstances." Lars paused. "I haven't been able to find the room that they're keeping Queen Anna in yet." Hans looked over his shoulder to make sure that they hadn't been discovered by more guards yet. "I don't think we have much more time," Hans said. "I'm not leaving Anna here," Elsa replied quickly. "I won't abandon her. Queen Elsa, the entire force of Arendelle will be here soon," Lars began. "The best thing that we can do is to get you to safety for now, and then we'll get Queen Anna back as soon as we have reinforcements." "No," Elsa said solemnly. "I can't." Hans looked toward Elsa. "You don't have to," he nodded. "We won't be abandoning Queen Anna today. I'll stay." "What?" both Lars and Elsa said at the same time. Hans nodded again. "We don't have time to discuss this, Lars. You guide the Queen out of the manor, and Queen Elsa?" He directed his attention toward the Icy Queen. "I will keep Queen Anna and Kristoff safe until you can return for us." Elsa looked back at Hans but couldn't seem to form any words. Hans turned his attention back to his brother. "Take Elsa to the cobblestone. I'll try to meet you there. But if I can't make it out, be sure that Ingrid and Anders know that I'll be waiting for their signal." "Signal?" Lars asked. "Go!" Hans urged. "Both of you need to get out of here now." The sound of guards rushing through the hall behind them got closer and closer as Lars and Elsa began to distance themselves from Hans and headed toward the kitchen. Hans turned back toward the direction he heard the guards coming from and started running as fast as he could back down the hall. He made a left around one of the corners and lingered just long enough for the guards to catch a glimpse of him. The young prince then quickly sprinted in the opposite direction, leading the group of guards away from his brother and the queen. He managed to keep the guards wrapped up in a chase throughout the manor for nearly 5 minutes, running up and down the stairs between the first and second floors. After running for as long as he could, Hans was out of breath. His pace slowed as he made his way around one final corner in the Duke's manor, only to be met by another group of guards who were standing in front of a single door. Hans smiled. "I take it the queen's in there?" he asked before being tackled to the ground by a guard from the group pursuing him.